You will all, I am sure, be very well aware that from the 6th of April 2023, the capital gains tax annual exemption is dropping like a stone, some say, from the current £12,300 per annum to £6,000 per annum, and then continuing its free fall. From the 6th of April 2024, it's dropping to £3,000. So that's quite a significant drop, especially when you consider the impact that could have, or perhaps should have, on investment wrapper decision making when combined with the reduction to the annual dividend allowance, which I've talked about in another video. It's estimated that 500,000 individuals and trusts, so a combination of 500,000 individuals and trusts, will be affected by that change to the CGT exemption, that reduction in the tax year 2023-2024, and 570,000 individuals will be affected by that change, the reduction in the CGT annual exemption in 2024-25. Now, there aren't masses of people, certainly not compared to income taxpayers in the UK, who pay capital gains tax. But when it is paid, the rate is, as you'll be well aware, 10% where the gain falls within the basic rate, the gain over and above the annual exemption, because there's no tax on the exempt gain, and 20% when it falls within the higher or additional rate. And of course, if you're selling a property that isn't your main residence, then we're looking at a 28% rate in that highest threshold, which most of those gains would probably fall, 18% if it fell within the basic rate threshold. So that's where we stand, and we know that more people will be affected. And so it behoves you, I think, to have discussions with those of your clients who you feel may be affected by this change, to discuss whether a different, maybe more tax appropriate wrapper might play for them. You know, you may think, I don't need a tax wrapper if until now my capital gains were scheduled to be within the CGT exemption. And if that's not going to be the case now, maybe you should be having that discussion. There is also that point, of course, that when you eventually realize a gain, then it may well be, if that gain, in fact, it's almost certain to be, but if that gain is built up over a number of years and it's material, then given that you can't roll forward the unused annual exemptions, they are very clearly available on a use it or lose it basis, then you are going to have a significant amount of gain subject to tax. So maybe you should have been thinking quite carefully about the value of having a wrapped investment that protects you from the gain. Most obviously ISA, most obviously pension. If we're thinking about investment bonds, they play less powerfully to the tax deferment qualities, which they definitely have and definitely do in relation to income, especially dividend income, with lower or no tax rates inside the bond, and then a basic rate credit coming out. With the capital gain, of course, what you are doing is, if when you put the gain inside an investment bond, is suffering internal rates of tax if it's a UK bond at whatever rate of tax the life company reserves for on its capital gains. It can't be more than 20%. Effectively, the rate of basic rate of tax that is effectively the anchor for corporation tax on capital gains made inside a UK life fund. Of course, 0% tax inside an offshore bond. But then when you remove the gain, any gain that is attributed to a capital gain, in fact, all gains are going to be subject to income tax. So the gain, the tax that you are going to be paying may well be more when you withdraw it from a bond than it would be had you just suffered it as a pure gain. Of course, when making that decision whether to wrap an investment in an investment bond, you'll need to consider where all of the growth in the value of that bond and the eventually realized gain is coming from, to what extent it's coming from reinvested income, which would play well inside a bond, to capital gain, which may be better outside of the bond. It is very fund dependent and individual dependent. So that's something to definitely keep in mind. And of course, I would remind you, of course, without question, to every year, remember that you cannot roll forward those unused capital gains tax exemptions. So if you want to continue to minimize the gap between the acquisition price value of the investment and the eventual realized value, and so that the gap between, which represents the gain, is as small as possible, then you need to be doing all you can each year to use the CGT exemption to raise the base value, but without triggering a tax liability, i.e. make disposals, the gain on which will fall within your annual CGT exemption, then effectively use it. But at the same time, not triggering those dreaded, dare I say, dreaded, I've said it, the bed and breakfast rules. So don't reacquire exactly the same stocks the same units, the same shares in the OIC that you're disposing of within that 30 days. Otherwise, the effect of the transaction is just neutralized. It's just ignored. You can buy back something similar, but not exactly the same. And I'm sure you'll all be aware of that. It will carry a cost, but it's worth doing often to do the work to keep that gap between acquisition value and realized value as low as possible, because it's that gap that represents the gain.